Hi, my name is Landon, and I'll be discussing the theory of natural law. So, natural law, the approach to it is just based off the natural world, reasoning, and God's will. So, it basically just states that the world is constructed in a way from God Himself in order to provide us with reasoning and rules and kind of an establishment of how to be a good person and make good ethical decisions. So, this type of theory and principles is unrelated to any governmental figures or any authoritative figures. It is mostly based off nature, provides us with the premise of how to act rationally and how to make decisions that are ethical and good. So the establishment of natural law, so it first had its origination from Roman and Greek philosophers. So they were mainly focused on the idea of the world and how nature provides us reasoning and how we should function as a society and how we have good morals and make good decisions and just that correlation. But it wasn't until Thomas Aquinas came in where he extensively wrote on the first philosophical ideas of natural law and combined it with Christianity in order to create that legitimized idea and principle of natural law itself. So Thomas Aquinas was born in Italy in 1225. He was raised in a highly religious household, very Christian, very into God's will, God's divinity, and God is the overall being that helps him live and make good decisions. He then decided to go and study at the University of Naples and then the University of Paris, and that is where he learned extensively on the philosophical ideals of Aristotle, which focused on nature and reasoning. And that is when he decided to become highly immersed in that idea of nature and reasoning, but he decided to incorporate his own background as a Christian and highly religious person and mesh the two together in order to create that relationship between nature, reasoning, and God's will, and how God provides us with nature and the construction of the world in order to help us find reasoning, in order to guide us toward good decisions and things like that. Okay, and then the historical context surrounding natural law. So during this time period of when Thomas Aquinas was born, there was a reemergence in the ideals of the Roman and Greek philosophers of nature and rationality. So it was very much so practiced in schools, and it actually became known as scholasticism, which is just the idea of bringing in Aristotle's writings and his work and incorporating it into their education. And then also at this time, Europe was very big on religion, and Christian theology. So schools decided to attempt to find that connection between the two, and that is what Thomas Aquinas is very much known for, is his combination of the two in creating the establishment of natural law itself. So during this time, as I stated, it was the reemergence of Greek and Roman philosophy and the works of Aristotle, and along with the societal acceptance and view of Christianity and Christian theology, and so these came together by scholars who were becoming educated, and they attempted to form the connection between the two in order to basically just find the relationship between God, nature, and reasoning. Okay, and this is just a quote from Thomas Aquinas that just said that philosophy is a kind of revelation. The study of philosophy is in its own right allowable and praiseworthy because God revealed to the philosophers the truth which they perceived as the apostle. So this is just saying, once again, that God has created this world and it works in a way of rationality. He created it to work rationally and to give us that basis and background and ruling in order for us to make decisions. And he's basically saying that philosophers were given this right by God in order to see and perceive these rational things in nature and make decisions. It was the philosophers who are giving that sight by God in order to see what he is attempting to say and see his will and see his intention that nature is made in a way for us to understand and find rationality and then incorporate this into our lives. Okay, so just other components of natural law just include the doctrine of double effect, which is just the basis that if there is a good or bad decision to make, as long as the good was intended, then it is ethically correct and based off like the rationality of natural law that it is a good decision. Just to reiterate, natural law is just the basis of God's will, God's divinity, and how he created this world in order to provide us with reasoning and the necessary understanding in order for us to make decisions and think rationally. Another component of natural law is also the principle of totality, which is just the basis that the human body is created to function properly, but if there is an occasion where it doesn't, it is okay to change one's body in order to ensure that proper functioning. Okay, and just to focus on these two principles themselves is just the doctrine of double effect. Is, as I said earlier, is just making sure that if a good and bad consequence is occurring at the same time, then it is okay as long as the good is intended. And this is just like based off of natural law, just based off the idea that there can be like in-betweens, there can be a good and bad thing happening at once, that natural law is deciding to, understand that there's more than just a good or bad at one time. It understands that there can be both, and so it just states that as long as the good was intended, then it is okay, as long as it is rational. And these two principles also go to work mainly in the moral and law areas. And then the principle of totality, just as I stated earlier, is in order to ensure bodily function, that the body shouldn't be changed, that it is God's temple, and it should not be changed for materialistic or other reasons like that. It should only be changed to ensure function. Okay, and then just a case example is a case study involving gender re-identification surgery. So in this case, just a man is deciding to consult his physician about undergoing gender re-identification, and because of his gender dysphoria, which is the idea of being trapped in a body that isn't yours, so he believes he is trapped in his own body, but he's a woman, his physician decides to decline, and in turn the patient decides to sue and state that he is rejecting his right to his body and rejecting his right to gender re-identification surgery. So this case correlates with natural law just simply off the basis of the principle of totality and the fact that our body is God's temple and it should not be changed unless it is to ensure proper functioning. And in this case, the physician decides to rule that under natural law, that the body is going to be undergoing unnecessary medical procedures that are not able to ensure functioning or provide any real good reasoning as to why it should be changed. So just under the idea of natural law, it just prohibits the idea of gender re-identification surgery, just simply based off the premise that it is God's temple and that it does not serve any purpose in ensuring functioning of the body and goes against, in a sense, natural standards of a male having those genital parts and a woman having those, and that is how nature and God has created us, and for that reason it should not be changed. And then that's the end of my presentation, and here are my references.